Hello. Hi. I like to begin with a poem that is really close to our hearts. And even if you all don't read poems now, I'm sure you all have read this poem at some point of time. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty together again. How many of you imagined this image when I was reading the poem? Why do you think the poem is talking about an egg? Have you ever wondered what this poem might actually be about? Humpty Dumpty, if you listen to the poem carefully, if you've ever noticed, does not even mention the word egg in it. Humpty Dumpty is not an egg. Humpty Dumpty is a cannonball. Historical evidence suggests that Humpty Dumpty was a cannon used by the Royalists in the English Civil War. In a vicious battle in 1648, the cannonball fell from the battlement and could not be recovered again. That is what it means. It could not be put together again. If you've ever read, each poem is more than what it appears to be. Words are more than what they mean. We often forget that words are the most powerful tools that we have. I'm not going to tell you what Ringa Ringa Roses means or what London Bridge is falling down means, but you must have figured out by now that these nonsense-sounding rhymes have hidden, graver political meaning. You might be wondering, are nursery rhymes even songs? Are even poems? In an essay by John Stuart Mill, he answers this very basic question: what is poetry? Poetry is not matter of fact or science. Poetry's purpose is to act upon the emotions. The interest excited by poetry comes from the representation of feelings. Poetry works internally. That which is poetic is feeling confessing itself to itself in symbols. Poetry, whose material is language, is the most human and the least worldly of the arts. Because the end product of poetry is closest to the thought that inspires it. You can say anything you want with poetry. All the things that are unwritten are poetry. Poems are mirrors. Poems are fearless. What's vulnerable and looks you in the face is poetry. The act of listening to poetry makes you feel, recognize, see things about yourself, and with this new knowledge, you're able to see the world better. So how many of you actually wanted to be here when you were a kid? Like you actually wanted to come to IIM and become an MBA graduate? See, when we're children, we dream differently. Nobody raised their hands, I think, except one. There was a story on the Humans of New York page on Facebook where a young boy tells Brendan that he feels that life is like watching videos on YouTube. Because just when you figure out that this is the most interesting thing that I want to watch, you somehow always happen to glance on the recommendations, on the sidebar, and then you figure out, no, this might be more interesting. This is what happened to me. I gave the entrance exam for CAT as well and cleared it and everything, but somehow I got distracted and found my calling in poetry. Like all good children of India, I wanted to be a doctor first, then an engineer, and a little before that, I wanted to be an astronaut, a firefighter, and if you go really back down, I wanted to be a G.I. Joe. So the reason I feel that poetry is my calling is with poetry, I can be all of these things. I can feel all of these things. So if you think that you're not good enough to be one thing, it's better to become a poet because then you get to be everybody. So I can be everybody in this room. The job of a poet or the work of a poem is to invoke emotions in you. If you could count the number of I love yous I've paused on my tongue when I look at you, you would see that my throat is a redneck, sun-kissed with silence, kisses ready to burst into 1,000 dreams. Did you feel that? Have you ever felt like that for anybody? When you dealt me your hand, I put all my faith in the hearts in your cards and never wondered what the spades are for. Heartbreaks, betrayal, stuff like that. We've all felt that, right? At the most basic level, poetry is important because it makes us think. It opens us up to wonder, to the astonishing possibilities of language. It is a discipline that helps us re-engage with the world. This is why I say that when you're saying something, make sure that you've said it. It is unfair to not say words out loud and not say what you mean. Delhi was known as the city of poets. We can never have a conversation about Delhi without using the word Ghalib and recalling Ghalib's poetry. But somehow along the line, this public act of reading poetry got lost. Over the last 2-3 years, between all the public protest and the political humdrum, what started happening was a lot of students from different universities started holding poetry readings. And on one such evening, even I sat down with a couple of friends and thought that, okay, all the gay people in the world don't get to stand on stage and read out poems, so let me figure out a way to get that platform. So I started Bring Back the Poets 2 years ago. Bring Back the Poets is India's first queer spoken word poetry performance group. And when I first organized India's first queer poetry slam, my worry was getting more than, how do I get more than 10 to 15 people in a room? But by the end of the evening, there were 200, 300 people who wanted to sit in a room which was just enough for 30 people. So that is when all of us, all the young poets who had collected that day, figured out that there's some potential, there's some power in poetry, and maybe we never looked at that. So it's really difficult because a lot of people ask me, okay, you're a poet, but what do you do? So obviously they want to ask me if I'm making any money out of this. What I really think is, I'll read this poem out. It's easy to sink in swamps, to drown in salt water. When your heart feels stagnant, remember, mangroves stand, feet in the mud, hands in the skies, breathing life. Damp is not a dirty word. Even lilies grow in these waters. Poetry somehow has the capacity of touching souls, of touching lives. I just think there's a poet in each one of you. It just requires that one punch in the face that gets you talking. So I really hope that one of these days, all of you get down to writing something that really means something to you. Thank you.